Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to CatFish Talk, and we're here live here tonight. I got my host Joey Kirby, and we have a special guest in with us tonight. He's down here in the Panhandle of Florida, and his name is Chad Bailey. He's a fishing guide for you. Are you still guiding, Chad?
Not so much anymore. The Hurricane Michael really kind of put a damper on it, but I still find a way to go all the time.
We got him live with us in here, the house with us tonight. And I think you got a YouTube channel also, don't you, Chad? Why don't you tell them what the name of your YouTube channel is?
Yes, sir. It's Size Matters Outdoors. And we're still growing it, but it's Size Matters is one word, and then Outdoors. And we do a little bit of everything on there. So love to have some of you guys tune in to it sometime.
Guys, we're looking for an exciting program tonight. If you don't know this guy, I'm sure you're going to get to know him tonight, and I hope that you're following him a little bit. He fishes a lot with his son. Brayley's out with him. They was just out to the night, boy, and they was doing a good job catching. And we was just talking, Chad and a couple other guys. I know Ronnie Dixon and Marty and them have come close several times. The Florida state record's around 70 pounds. And these guys right here is hitting all around that mark. It's just a matter of time, Chad, before y'all get that, ain't it?
It's a matter of time, but that's an elusive joker.
Yeah. And, you know, we was talking today I was talking with Chad Bryant from up here around Gunnersville. And me and him was talking, and getting over the 70-pound mark, no matter where you at, is pretty tough. Pretty tough feat.
Absolutely.
What's the closest you got to the state record there, Chad?
I caught one last year that was 67 and a half pounds. When I finally got him weighed, he'd been in my live well for 5 solid hours. You know, it was hard to get a good weight on one at 1 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
You reckon you might be able to get Dale to make you about a 9-pound sinker or something next time you get that close?
Nah, we're gonna do our best to catch him in his element. But you know that fish had spit up 2 big gizzard shad in my live well.
Yeah.
And you know, Ronnie Dixon has been the same way. He's caught so many of them. It takes a little while to get them weighed. You know, that fish loses pounds very quickly. But
and one of the things I've seen with the guys who have come close to a state record, no matter where they at, is the amount of time that it takes to get the fish weighed. I know they caught one in Memphis that was somewhere close to that state record. I know I hear about y'all. Mike Mitchell caught one not too long ago up on Wilson, there on the Tennessee River. And the time it takes to get them weighed is several hours to get somebody there. And if you're really close to it, you know as well as I do, that fish regurgitates a lot of stuff in a live well. And so they lose several pounds inside that live well.
Absolutely, yeah. And it happens quick. I mean, within, you know, it's the first moment that fish gets uncomfortable. You know, it's coming back up, but.
Well, guys, we got him in here tonight. We're going to talk. Chad fishes a lot of current down here around the Apalachicola River, on Lake Seminole. He fishes up in there. So if you keep up with him, you know, man, that this guy here, he can catch blue cats. He can catch flatheads. He can catch bluegill. I'm telling you, this dude right here, if there's a fish around, he can catch him. And Chad, we want to get into some details on this right here. And I want to ask you this as we get started for our viewers. If you're going out on a body of water, and let's cover this to start with, probably what's one of the most important things that you're looking for, and what is one of the most important factors in trying to go catch a catfish?
You know, number one, I think, is doing a little bit of research to figure out what body of water around your area you need to go to at a specific time. You know, if the river's making a big rise and certain, like our river will flood and gets out of the bank so bad, it gets almost unfishable. So you almost have to maybe veer over to the lake or go to another river that's not affected quite so much. That's something that I see a lot of people, all the time. There's never a bad time to go fishing. It's always better to be out there giving it a shot and trying, but you definitely need to do your research to make sure the body of water that you are on, that you have a chance to really have success. If not, you're really fishing hard sometimes for little reward.
That's right. That's a true statement.
Let's do this right here too, Chad, because I think this is probably one of the factors that probably some of the guys that's in here with us in chat, they know this, but one of the questions that I'm constantly asked is, how do you catch these big fish, and what do you look for, where you go? And I always tell them, probably one of the most important things to me is that bait. And how important is that to you?
It is. I mean, and it depends what body of water you're on. Now, when I fish the Apalachicola River, it's not a big river. We average 20 to 30 foot in the deep part of the bends. It's fast moving current. On that river, our fish are more structure oriented than anything. So I have to look for wood structure, rock structure, current seams, something to entice them, not as much bait fish. Now, when I get somewhere that there's less current, per se a lake or a slower moving river, like you just said, I think the bait that's 75% of it. If you can find where those bait fish are, be it bluegill, white bass, crappie, shad, gizzard shad, skipjacks, if you can find where that bait fish is, them bigger fish are going to congregate to that area, and they're there for a reason. They're there to feed.
Yeah. Chan, so one of the things that you're looking for in that current, because I've been down there to Apalachicola, and I think it was up a little bit the day I was there, and it was pretty swift. I mean, that water was rolling. So one of the things that you're saying that you're looking for is not so much as you do on a lake where you're trying to find bait congregated, but you're fishing these structures and fishing these ledges where these fish are just sort of, I call it hunkered down in behind it. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. In the Apalachicola River, which is primarily where I fish, I mean, it's 2 miles out my front door is the Apalachicola River. Now, the boat ramps are a little further than that, but the current is so swift, you have to find some type of structure, because a fish ain't a dummy. Most of the time, they're not going to sit right out there in the nastiest current. They smart. They're going to get behind a log jam or a tree, or find some type of break in that current seam, and they sit there, and like you said, they're kind of holding. But when you drop that piece of skipjack or that bluegill, or you drop that live bluegill in front of that structure where he's at, he'll sense it and come on out, and then you turn it into feeding time.
Yeah. Chan, now, this is one thing that I've noticed, and especially, I've depended on my electronics a lot over the years, and for years I fished without them, and you get used to them. But one of the things that I've noticed in that swift current, man, them fishes, and I was just asked the other day. I said I can't see no fish in the river. I can't see them, and it was so swift. I said you ain't gonna be able to see them jokers. They buried down. Have you noticed the same thing?
Yeah, first of all, it's almost impossible to see a flathead, on it, because just the way he's built, the way he's going to lay on the bottom, it's really hard to see them on 2D side scan, down image. It's hard to see them on the electronics anyways. You don't get those big arches like you do the blue cats where they're suspended. But in the current, and now you got a guest coming on next week, Journey. And if somebody can find one on the electronics, it's gonna be him, because he knows his stuff. But yeah, to me, I don't see them on the depth finder so much. So in the current, if I'm fishing heavy current, I look for that structure. Now I use my electronics to find that structure, and you can pinpoint it nowadays. You know exactly where it's at and exactly how it looks. You can see all them branches. You know exactly what it is, how high up in the water column it comes, and then you fish accordingly to that structure. Versus looking for the fish as we would do on a lake.
Yeah, yes, sir. And I've noticed the same thing. Joey's done moved up in the world, and he's got him a hummingbird now.
I do.
I don't know what. Is that what you running, Chad?
Yeah, I run a Solix 10.
So, well, we got Joey on board with us now. He's been fooling around with this thing, and you made mention because you can dial in location. I don't know if anybody is aware with this, but as you ride past a top or something, and you run your cursor over to that top, if you just leave that little, I call it the little cursor sitting there, and if you look on top of your electronics, it starts to tell you just how far away from that top that you are. It gives you a great idea of anchoring. Do you use that?
Yeah, I do. And one thing, precision anchoring is what you see a lot of guys talking about. There's a handful of guys got videos on it, but you can use those rulers on there. I mean, and legitimately drop down 150 feet above it, put out 75 foot of anchor rope, and you know that you're 75 foot from that treetop you marked. And it really dials it in. And if you miss it by 50 feet, it don't mean that fish ain't gonna swim out and eventually get your bait, but he's gonna come a lot faster if you put it on his nose.
Right. Hey, Chad, there's if you don't mind, answer these questions pretty quick. There's a few in the chat that I don't want to get too far down before we ask. Robert Thomas asked, what's your go-to rig?
Bunny, you should ask. I got two of them, and you're gonna like one of them, I know. Now, I got some rods right here with me because that's always a popular question. Now, as far as equipment, I run Big Cat Fever rods, and I run the Shimano Dakota 600s. This is my favorite setup, but there's so many good ones on the market right now.
Yeah.
I think you run some Big Cat Fever stuff, right?
I do.
And Stacy likes the tangling with catfish, and there's so many good ones on the market right now. But my go-to rig that I use, and not only is it for flathead fishing, but I catch just as many blues on this rig right here as anything, and it is the traditional Carolina rig.
Yes,
and I use 8 ounce no rolls, and I get them from Dale's Tackle. But I run 2 of the rubber beads because these that's a big heavy weight and it smashes them up so bad. So I run 2 of the rubber beads. A nice heavy duty swivel. On my reels, I use 150 and 200 pound braid, and that's really heavy. That's just what I use because I fish so much structure. And a lot of people don't use that, but Stacy knows a little bit about where I'm fishing at, and he could probably tell you why a little bit, as I do it. But I run about a 12-inch leader. I'm not sure what all's in focus right here, but I run about a 12-inch leader, 80 to 100 pound monofilament, and I'm running, on my big rods, I'll run a 12-aught flathead fever hook. But, I go as small as 5-aught, just depending on where I'm at, matching my bait size. But I like the Carolina rig. 90% of the time, that is a go-to rig to me.
Gotcha.
But I got one more I want to show you right here. And this one's new and exciting. And I seen one of these and had to try them out, but this is called the Kirby rig. Dale give me some of these at Winter Blues, and they sat in my tackle box because I don't use floats a whole lot.
Yeah, right.
And I tied one on, Joey, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this thing's got teeth marks in it from where the fish are hitting it. But I throw one of these at a time out of my 9 rods, and I catch as many fish on this when I'm blue catfishing as the rest of my rods combined.
That bite marker on there is probably from Dale. Andrew,
but those
Andrew
are the two rigs that
McGee,
I use.
thank you. Andrew McGee asked, where did you learn to fish and who inspired you to fish?
Hey, it might be my Uncle Andrew. Andrew's actually my uncle, but that's my mama's brother. But no, my dad and my granddad, my granddad died when I was 2.5, so I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time with him, but he was a fishing man. That was one of his passions. My granddaddy really loved to fish, and it passed on to my dad. So I grew up just fishing, brim fishing and channel cat fishing with my dad. And that was it pretty much, he taught me everything I know. As I got a little older and got into trophy catfishing, I had to kind of learn a little bit on my own, but I learned most of the stuff that I know as far as trophy catfishing from these local tournament anglers that I fished against for years. That's the best place to gain good, to gain some good knowledge. It's just your local guys that fish those bodies of water that you're fishing, and most of them are really good about handing you some good information.
Gotcha. Yes, sir. And there was one more. What's your I guess your favorite technique of catching big catfish is the rig, your Carolina rig with the 8-ounce sinker anchored up?
Yeah. I like the anchor fish. I like to, even when I fish a lake, I drag baits and I've drug baits for years, and I enjoy it. I'm not near as good at it as some of you guys are, and some of the guys that do it all the time, just because I don't fish the lake so much. But I really like to sit on anchor or tie up. I use the brush gripper a lot in that current and clip on the trees. But I like to be still somewhere and wait it out. I like to sit there for a while, and I tend to catch my bigger fish anchored up for a good period of time, and that's, to me, when the magic happens.
Yeah. Hey, one
take a break.
question for me that I have is I watched your video. I don't know which one it was, but I watched it a year or so ago. When you're anchored up on a good pile of structure, about how many times do you get hung up throwing into that structure before you get frustrated?
I rarely ever get frustrated when I get hung.
Yeah.
Because I have learned that if you are not getting hung, when you're flathead fishing, if you're not getting hung, you ain't in the right spot.
So probably on your worst day fishing a good piece of structure, just a guesstimate, how many times have you been hung up? Oh, we lost him.
Uh-oh.
He's back.
What's the
Hello.
A big piece of structure? What's the most that you think that you've ever been hung up?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I had a technical difficulty. I don't know, a phone call or something come through.
Can you hear us?
I lost the volume, guys.
Hey, go out and come back.
Hey, Chad, go out, go all the way out and come back
Hello.
in. Go back through the same process, but go out and come back in. Hang on, guys. I'm fixing.
I have lost the volume.
Hang on.
Hang on just 1 second. Go ahead. I'm fixing to message him, and so you take over here for a minute, Joey.
All right. Well. Yep. Now that's the bugger about using these phones. If somebody calls, you're on mute.
Yeah. Hey, let's do this right here, Joey. Let's do a giveaway here tonight.
All right.
And we've got a guy that has stepped up. Hey, he's wanting to donate something tonight. His name is Jerry Droughty. Jerry is from Bloodline Tackle. He makes a lot of different weights, dragging weights, standing sticks. I think he's even making some rods now. And so he wants to give away something tonight. And we're going to make that happen. The winner of this needs to contact or message me, and I can get you the information on getting in touch with Jerry Droughty. So as we get ready to do this right here, I know people when they come into the chat, boy, they was putting that SDC already in there, smack down catfishing, baby. And Joey, if you will give me a number between 1 and 5 right here, we'll go with this right here. All right.
Let's go with lucky number 3. Chad.
Lucky number 3.
If somebody calls you, you can we can hear everything you say, but you can't hear. So if somebody calls you back, just go back to Stacy's invite and you can come back on, because that's
that worked perfect as soon as I did it. So I guess y'all done this before.
Yep. This is the first night I've used a laptop.
Oh, okay.
So here it is right here, Corey Dowden. If you would, you can message me on Facebook Messenger. You can do it on Stacy. You can hit me up with Stacy Gass on my Facebook, or you can go to Smackdown Catfishing and just leave a message in there. I can get you information and get you contacted with Jerry Droughty. We want to thank you for being a part of this program. Guys, I can't tell you enough. It's the people in this chat right here at what makes this program possible. So, Corey, just message me, and we'll get you in touch with Jerry Droughty with Bloodline Tackle. Jerry, we appreciate you so much, man. Thank you for your donation. Thank you for supporting this program.
Chad, the last question that I see, and then we'll go on. There's 2 people that's asking, how long do you sit on a spot before you pack up and hit the road?
Well, I've always joked and said I listen to the fishing gods, and they'll usually tell me when to move on. But I would say on average, if I pull up to a spot and I'm flathead fishing, and I pull up on a structure, and I fish a lot of rods. I fish 8 or 9 rods at a time, and I'm dropping them all down in that structure. If I pull up there and 15, 20 minutes goes by and I don't get a bite, I'm up and I'm going to the next spot. If I'm getting bites, I'll stay until them bites slow down.
Okay, there you go.
Chad, would you change that with the weather as far as the temperature goes? If it's colder or if it's warmer, does that change with you?
Yeah, in the colder weather, I'll sit a little longer. During the winter, I'll definitely. Now, if I'm blue cat fishing and I'm anchored up like on the lake, I'll sit there for 2 hours without getting a bite, because I think them fish in those lake systems, they're cruising them highways, they're cruising them shallows, and they're always making circles. So I'll sit for a long time. Me and my son fished a tournament Saturday night. It was kind of a digital weigh-in tournament that they did. And we fished 3 spots over 10 hours. And we caught 10 fish, but, we'd catch 2 or 3 fish at a spot, and it'd take 2 or 3 hours to do it. But they come in spurts. But, probably the longest I would sit in a flathead spot would be about an hour. And that's really stretching it. I think if you drop a live brim anywhere around the flathead, it's going to entice him enough to come hit it pretty quick.
Well, I've shared this before, and some of the things I do, I do 1 or 2 different things when I'm anchor fishing, and we'll call it, sometimes I'm running and gunning. I pull up, I look around my depth finder, or where my clock's at, and it may be 10 o'clock, and I'm like, 10:25, we ain't caught one, we're moving. And the same thing at the next spot, 20, 25 minutes, and we just going. There's sometimes, man, if I think that when the biggest fish that we've caught is getting in the right place and anchor down and literally sit there 3, 4, 5 hours.
If I'm pulling the anchor, it's 15 minutes.
Oh, man.
Chad, I will say, when I got to pull the anchor, we seem to sit a lot longer in one spot.
Yeah, oh yeah. If I'm the anchor man, that spot looks good 5 or 6 hours. but yeah.
There's one more question, Chad. Your favorite bait?
Bluegill.
Bluegill. All right.
Any type of bluegill about hand size, just a little smaller than your hand, is typically going to get the best bites. But a warmouth or a stump knocker in the panfish family, a warmouth or a stump knocker, is the most hardy, and they seem to get the best reaction.
And all jokes aside, you sitting in the biggest structure pile that you fish or whatever, what's the most that you've got hung up and broke off?
I drop down 8 or 9, 10 rods at a time. There's been times when nearly every one of them got hung up. But that's why I run the 200-pound braid and the 100-pound leaders 90% of the time, unless that weight gets hung in the tree. If your hook gets hung, you can snap that 100-pound leader, and all I got to do is pop a leader on. And, some of us pre-tie them and use the rig packs and all that. Most of the time, I can just get away with doing that. And I've experimented before with going back to monofilament line. I used the slime line for a little while, really liked it, but I tend to break off a little bit more my main line in that heavy structure. And Dale got a little mad at me when I told him I needed about 400 no rolls a week. He said, that's a little much, man. But yeah, I've had some nights now where I've easily broke off 50 rigs, and it puts a damper on you.
Well, there you go.
That's where the fish are.
Chad, we got a guy in here, Charles. I reckon maybe this is a Southern thing. He said he never heard of a stump knocker, but we've called. Listen, I've heard about them things since I was knee high.
and that used to be all I'd ever catch. But man,
that's along the line of a stick jack, isn't it?
What's that?
That's in the same family of the stick jack, isn't it?
I'm just about it.
Yeah.
Hey, Chad, there's one other thing that I want to cover. I know we're here about 30 minutes in this program.
All right.
You do a lot of night fishing, fishing at night.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about it. I know when you out there, man, you seem like you got some good lights and stuff like that. And tell us a little bit about your setup on that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Everybody's boats, everybody decks their boats out different ways with different red and green and blue and purple. The black lights are a big thing now. For years, I've used a green light. And I used to take a submergible green light and I'd hang it way up on a pole above my boat. Well, that always puts a big casting shadow down on the water. And if I'm fishing shallow water, I always thought it might have affected the fish bite a little bit. So I've went to just the small LED strips. This is a submergible light. This is a submergible bait light. And this is, I guess, about a 12-inch bait light. And I got it off of Amazon. And this one works good, but there's hundreds of them that work excellent.
What's the name of that one, Chad?
Hydro Glow fishing lights.
Does it not pull much off your battery?
Very, very little. And this one, this one comes with just little gator clips. And I have a spare battery that I keep separate from everything. It sits on my deck behind my rod holder, my rod rack, and I keep it charged. And I can fish probably 4 nights, fishing 12 hours at a time off that battery before it'll kill it. So it's not pulling a whole lot. But I honestly, I take this, I plug it in, and I lay it on my back deck, and I'll put a bucket, or I got a box that I built now, and put that between me and the light so I'm not staring into the bright green light, and it illuminates my rods. And I know y'all seen them on my pictures and
look good
videos. Those rods are illuminated nice and neat, but this is portable, and I didn't have to mount it to anything, and it's not hardwired into my boat, so I can move it wherever. And that's a good alternative, and I think you can usually get them for $20 to $30. For the beginner that's looking to get out there, that's a great alternative.
Chad, there was a comment here. When you're out flathead fishing, do you use the clicker mode? Zach Presley had asked this.
I don't. One of the biggest reasons that I don't, two biggest reasons. Number one, I can't stand the sound. I don't like it. But number two, I fish such heavy current the current alone, it takes me 8 ounces to get down, but 90% of the time that current will actually pull that clicker out, unless you got a rod that has a really tight clicker. Sometimes that current or that bluegill makes a good run and he'll just pull it in that log jam. And because I fish the log jams, I lock my rods down and I tighten my drag down so that when that fish hits, he cannot pull me any further into that log jam. Because you know how it is. I mean, you're fishing a big tree that's 6, 8, 10 foot up off the bottom. If he pulls you much further down into it, you ain't getting him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about that technique too. I think I do it every once in a while. I know I do it with Stacy some, but it only how that I really, unless it's just trying to hear that sound, is if I'm not paying much attention. I know that, which is a lot. But a lot of times when you're using them circle hooks, that bait clicker actually make you lose some fish, because a lot of times them big circle hooks hook up when they hit that rod. And with that drag system or with that clicker on, then that's enabling them to grab, leave slack in that line instead of set that hook. So now Stacy don't have to worry about it, because he puts a hurting on them. But them big 90% of the time they do all the work. And
he smacks them now.
Yeah, he does.
but the bait clicker really has its time and its place too. You know what I mean? I use a good heavy duty 1/2-inch base rod holder. Those rod holders these days are going to really hold that rod. You don't have to worry about it going nowhere. With these nice rods that we're all using these days, whether it's, like you said, tangling with catfish, warrior cat, big cat fevers, slime cat, these rods are made to load up, and I think if you lock that rod in, you're letting that rod do the work, and that's what they're made for. They're made to load up. These circle hooks are made to, but even the hook that Stacy uses, it's a hybrid, and if he loads it up, it's going to smack him too,
Yeah.
So I like to lock mine down, but if I was a bank fisherman and I had my rods every 20 feet down the bank, I'd absolutely have to use my clicker. Yeah. If not, you might not get to him.
Yeah, and there's times when I'm out, I hardly ever use my clicker, but there is time when I'm flathead fishing that if I, how I call them, man, they get that finicky bite. Just pole just eases over, and it seems like as soon as it starts to load up, he lets off of it, And so when he ever does that and does it a couple of times, I'll reach over there and mash my free spool and hit my clicker, and I'll let him pull it a little bit, click, 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 click. Then I lock it down, hoping he's done. Pop it to him.
That's a pretty good idea to me that I've never really even thought about. But you're right. Every now and then you get one that he's wise to it. He's smart enough, that he realizes something's up. So that's a pretty good idea. But my buddy Dan, when he fishes like the lake, he's putting rods out in the front of his boat when he's on anchor. The rods that he can't see, that he's not looking at. Now, he'll turn his bait clicker on them sometimes, because they're out of sight, out of mind, and that way you get a little bit of a warning, besides the boat just shaking, from one hammer down on it.
There was one more question right here, Chad, that they put on here that a guy asked. Do you trim the fins to prevent the bait from tangling up in the logs or anything like that?
No, I don't. I don't like to do anything to that brim or a bullhead if I'm using bullheads. I don't like to do anything to them that could change the way that they swim naturally. I want that fish to swim naturally. I want him to be healthy. I want that fish trying to find a way out of there. And I think sometimes if you wound them, even though they might twitch and do a little something, I think it deters the bite a little bit. And I've tried it, but I like to let that fish be as natural as he can. What I will do, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Finish up.
What I will do sometimes is if I'm fishing, I usually hook my bluegill in the back of him, behind that dorsal fin. But if I'm fishing heavy current, I will spin around and hook him through the lip or hook him through right behind the head. to keep him angled up the river a little more. And I think that helps from him, spinning me around and twisting up on him. But I don't have a lot of problem with my bluegills tangling me up like that.
Well, that's what I was fixing to ask you. Where do you hook them at? Do you hook them through the lip or through the back? And with me, if I'm in a lot of current, I hook him through the lip. If it ain't as much current, I hook him in the back. It seems like
That's
to
what
me
I do.
that in that heavy current, I reckon that water coming through the back of his gills. I don't know if it kills him or what it does, but
yeah, it'll spin him around. It's something you got to think about. If you got, depending on your bait size, if you put a 12-aught, and I know you use the Mad Catter XHD, that's a big old hook. And those flathead fevers that I use, them 12-aughts and Dale's new 12-aught, those are big, heavy-duty hooks. That's a lot of weight on a fish's, back. Especially you put him in current, it wounds him a little bit. And you're right, it'll spin him around and drag him backwards, and he'll be a goner.
Well, and I want to cover this, and we'll get ready to close up. But somebody asked me one time, and I do use some big hooks, and one reason that I went to the big hooks is fishing with big live brim. You take a 2 or 3-aught hook and hook him through the back. You don't have much point sticking out.
Absolutely.
And listen, I wanted to be able to hook that fish and have some hooks sticking out of his back so I could get a good hook set on one.
Right. And the fish that we're all trying to catch, those giant, elusive trophy catfish, he's going to need that 10 or 12-aught hook anyways. So you ain't losing nothing by going big. But to that point, the 67-pound blue cat that I caught last year was on a 5-aught flathead fever hook on a little sliver of mullet about that big. I mean, a little old tiny piece. I throwed it over in 2.5 foot of water off of the edge of a shoal bed, and that's where that fish come from.
Shane, here's a good question. Shane Sims asked, it's probably good for anybody that's watching right now, because I'm sure if you're fishing, your water's high. What kind of suggestion or tips would you give for high water fishing?
Well, just be ready for a struggle, typically. Now, if you're blue cat fishing, the high water does not affect them as much, because sometimes that hard flowing water, that flooded water, and those big current seams that it creates will really put them big blue cats in a feeding frenzy. But if you're flathead fishing, I've learned that, and I actually, it makes all the sense in the world, but Glenn Flowers, most people know Glenn Flowers and flathead catfish hunters, but Glenn absolutely smoked me about 7-8 years ago in a catfish tournament. It was flooded water. I fished the normal stuff that I usually fish, that heavy structure in the river current. We fished for 20 hours that night and caught one fish. And got back to the weigh-in, and Glenn and his buddy, they had 25 big old flatheads in their boat. And I said, what am I doing wrong, man? He said, we got, in the wing docks. We got behind them pilings. We found that current break. He said, I don't fish them any other time. But when it's flooded, they will congregate for miles to get in those big current breaks. And if I fish high water now, I look for those big jetties, wing docks, pilings, some kind of big. I'm not talking about just a little tree like we usually fish. I'm talking about, a big 100 feet, 200-foot piling to block that. But that's how I fish.
Them fish are looking for something to get out of that current, and I reckon that right there provides that for them. And they like me and you, if you're looking for that easiest way to be able to maintain yourself for a period of time, and that's where they're going to be at.
Right.
Do you use much cut bait? Zach Presley wants to know, do you use much cut bait?
So down here, when I'm flathead fishing, I never use cut shad or skipjack, as a lot of people do in the upper rivers, up in Alabama and Tennessee and whatnot. But during the spring of the year, February, March, April, into May, I use a lot of cut bluegill. cut bluegill is, I mean, it's deadly out there in the spring. The rest of the year, I pretty much use live bluegill, but cut bluegill works very good for me in the springtime.
So I can tell right now, the bluegill, no matter which way you go with him, that's your favorite bait right there.
I like him. You know, if I'm flathead fishing, I like that bluegill.
Let's do this right here. Let's do this
don't.
right here and get ready to close. Let's get ready to close down for the night. Guys, I want to do this, and I'm gonna let Chad close us out with one other thing, just a minute. But we want to do this right here and see who's still left in chat. So if you're still in here, I want you to do this because I'm looking at the time now. I can see who's in here, and it's 7:39 o'clock. To be available for this next giveaway. If you're still in here, put SDC in the comment box, and we're going to pick from that, and we're going to give this away at the very end. It's not one of these hats. It is a green one with the SmackDown name on the side. We're going to give away one of them here tonight. Chad, before we do this right here, is there anything else that you want to say before we get off of here?
Well, yeah. Well, number one, I want to go ahead while everybody's still on here and tell you guys thank you for what you're doing. It means a lot to a lot of us, especially, you know, right now the world's been crazy. People's quarantined and some people's out of work. It really means a lot to people sitting at the house to be able to watch you guys, get some tips, and use this time wisely. Both of you guys put out a lot of videos. So, you know, and as do I, and I get a lot of people, you know, to say thank you for putting out some content. So I thank you guys for, you know, having me on and having the show going like you do. But one thing that I'll tell you, anytime any of the people watching, if you go out on the river, the two biggest things I could leave with somebody is to be safe and be comfortable. Make sure you have you talked about this last week. Y'all did a good segment on safety equipment. You know, life jackets, anchoring properly, not pulling your anchor until you crunk your boat. Many different things. You know, a little emergency kit on the boat. You know, a health kit, first aid kit, all that stuff to make yourself safe. But another thing is to be comfortable. You know, make sure when you get out there, you know, if you know you're going to fish at night, get you a nice rain jacket that doubles. You know, it's going to keep you warm. It's going to keep you dry. If you fish at night, you guys know how it is. When the sun goes down, I don't care how hot it is, you're going to need your jacket. Bring your favorite snack, whether it's spicy viennas or canned mullet or whatever you like, and bring you some sweet tea. If you got some sweet tea, you're good and you're comfortable. But that's the biggest thing. You know, everybody that watches it, that when you get out there and do this on your own, stay safe and stay comfortable.
Well, I hit that by accident, so hang on.
Yeah.
I got to get it off right now. Let's do this right here. Let me see if I can. I'm here strolling around, and now I done hit something.
We've actually had a fella do a little donated to our show, and just to spread some to spread around a little bit to some of the sponsors, so to say, on the show, or some of the people that do giveaways and stuff. And he's donated some money. So this week's prize is going to go to a SmackDown hat from Dale's Tackle. It'll be shipped out probably. Dale's pretty Johnny on the spot at shipping, so hopefully he'll ship this hat out to the winner tomorrow. But it is from one of the catfish, the community, a fella. He didn't want his name mentioned, but he did donate some money. And this week's deal, the hat's going to come from Dale's Tackle, and it will be shipped tomorrow, or I would say tomorrow. Because like I said, his shipping is up to par. So I just wanted to get that out there, and we appreciate the fellow that donated.
Hey, Chad, thank you for being a part of this program. Timothy, I'm sorry about posting your name up there. Here I am strolling around and accidentally hit that. I want to close with this. We're going to give this hat away. I always like to read something. This was on my mind this afternoon on Luke chapter 12, verse 30. Luke chapter 12, verse 16. And Jesus is speaking a parable, and I want you to listen to this. The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentiful. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, this will I do. I will put down my barns, and I will build bigger. And there will I bestow my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thy ease, eat, drink, and be merry. I want you to listen to what the Lord said, because all of us face this. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? And the Lord made mention of this right here, and I made mention this earlier. The Lord asked, what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? I want to leave y'all with that. Give me a number between 1 and 7 again. We're going to choose here from the bottom of this crowd right here that's still in with us. We're going to give this hat away.
Give him a number there, Chad.
Let's go with number 3, because there's 3 of us.
That sounds good. So give me a. Marty High Note. Marty, get in contact with me. I'm fixing to post your name up here. Thank y'all for being a part. And we're going to get you a SmackDown hat headed your way from Dale's Tackle. He's got one. He'll ship it out to you. Guys, thank y'all so much for being a part of this program. Chad, thank you for being here with us tonight and sharing your knowledge about catfishing. And guys, we look forward to seeing y'all next Tuesday night at the same time. Hopefully we're going to have Journey Chowan here with us, and we're going to be talking about electronics, and we're going to just ask him 101 questions. He may feel like he's on Jeopardy by the time we get through with him. So guys, God bless y'all. May the favor of the Lord continually be upon y'all's life.
See y'all.
See you, Chad.
Hang on just a minute, Chad.
Thanks for having me.